My wife faked low libido for 3 years until I overheard her laughing about fooling me, exposed her lies, and ended a marriage built on manipulation. Have the drive anymore, honey. It's probably hormonal. And like the understanding husband I thought I was being, I believed every word that came out of her mouth. I'd even suggested doctor visits, bought her supplements, tried to be patient when she'd roll over with that tired sigh every single night. Hell, I'd convinced myself that this was just part of marriage, that passion naturally fades, and that I needed to be more supportive of her struggles. But last Tuesday changed everything. I came home early from work, planning to surprise her with dinner from that Italian place she loves. The house seemed empty when I walked in, but I could hear voices coming from the back patio. She was out there with her 2 closest friends, glasses of wine in hand, laughing about something. I was about to announce myself when I heard my name mentioned. Something in the tone made me stop dead in my tracks. Honestly, it's gotten so easy, she was saying, and I could hear the smugness in her voice. I just tell him I have 0 libido, and he believes it completely. 3 years now, and he still falls for it every time. My blood went cold. I pressed myself against the wall, hidden from view, but close enough to hear every word. Wait, you've been faking having no sex drive this whole time? One of her friends asked, sounding shocked. Of course I have. Look, I love him, but sometimes I just don't want to deal with it, you know? So I invented this whole hormone imbalance story. Even mentioned going to the doctor about it a few times. He's so concerned and understanding about my condition that he never pushes. The other friend laughed. That's terrible, but honestly, kind of brilliant. How do you keep it up? It's not hard when your husband is that gullible, she replied, and I could practically hear her shrugging. I just act tired, mention feeling off, maybe throw in some fake medical research I found online. He eats it up every time. Sometimes I think he actually prefers it this way because he doesn't have to worry about whether he's satisfying me. They all laughed, and the sound made my stomach turn. But what about when you actually do want sex? The first friend asked. Oh, that's the best part. I just initiate it myself and tell him I'm having a good day or that I'm feeling a little better. He gets so excited about my rare moments of desire that he never questions why they're so convenient for me. I stood there, frozen, as the full weight of what I was hearing sank in. Every rejection, every excuse, every time she'd made me feel like I was being selfish for wanting intimacy with my own wife, it had all been a lie. A calculated, deliberate lie designed to manipulate me into accepting whatever scraps of affection she felt like throwing my way. You're terrible, one friend said, but she was still laughing. What if he finds out? He won't. He's too trusting and honestly too easy to fool. I've got this down to a science now. Besides, what's he going to do? Accuse me of lying about a medical condition? He'd feel too guilty to even consider it. I heard chairs scraping against the patio tiles, and I quickly moved away from the door, my mind racing. They were wrapping up their conversation, talking about weekend plans and other mundane things. But I couldn't focus on anything except what I just discovered. For 3 years I'd been living with a woman who saw me as nothing more than a gullible fool. Someone so easy to manipulate that she'd turned it into entertainment for her friends. Someone whose trust and concern she'd weaponized against him. I quietly left the house and drove around for an hour, trying to process what I'd learned. When I finally came back, I acted completely normal. I told her I'd gotten held up at work, asked about her day, and listened as she casually mentioned having the girls over for wine. How was that? I asked, watching her face carefully. Oh, you know how it is, just girl talk. Nothing too exciting. She smiled at me with the same warm expression she always used, and it made my skin crawl. How many times had she looked at me like that while actively deceiving me? That night, she gave me the usual routine. I'm pretty tired tonight, babe. Maybe this weekend. The same words, the same apologetic tone, the same gentle pat on my arm that was supposed to make me feel better about being rejected. But this time, I knew exactly what it really was. It wasn't about hormones or medical conditions or anything beyond her control. It was about control itself. She had decided that she could manage my expectations, manipulate my emotions, and make me grateful for whatever she chose to give me. As I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling while she slept peacefully beside me, I realized something important. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was something much more dangerous than angry. I was focused. For 3 years I'd been the understanding husband, the patient partner, the man who never questioned or pushed or demanded explanations. I'd been exactly what she thought I was, easy to fool. But that version of me died the moment I heard her laughing about how simple it was to deceive me. I had a choice to make. I could confront her directly, let her know what I discovered, and watch her scramble to explain or apologize. Or I could be strategic about this. I could take my time, gather my thoughts, and figure out exactly how I wanted to handle a woman who had spent 3 years treating me like an idiot. The woman sleeping next to me had no idea that her little game was about to change completely. She thought she was married to someone predictable, someone who would always take her at her word and never question her stories. She was about to learn just how wrong she'd been. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. While she got ready for work, humming to herself in the bathroom like she didn't have a care in the world, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her yet. Instead, I was going to watch, learn, and document exactly how deep this deception went. Over the next few days, I started paying attention to things I'd previously ignored. Her energy levels, her mood patterns, her behavior when she thought I wasn't watching. What I discovered was both enlightening and infuriating. She had plenty of energy for everything except me. She'd come home from work claiming to be exhausted, but then spend 2 hours on the phone with friends, laughing and animated. She'd say she was too tired for intimacy, but I'd catch her staying up until midnight, scrolling through social media, fully alert and engaged. The most telling observation came on Thursday evening. She was in the kitchen making dinner, dancing to music from her phone, completely energetic and vibrant. When I walked in, she immediately shifted gears. "Oh, hey, honey. I'm making your favorite, but I'm feeling pretty worn out today. Might be an early night for me." The transformation was so smooth, so practiced that I almost admired the performance. "Rough day at work?" I asked, playing along. "You know how it is. Just feeling a bit off. Probably that hormone thing again." She gave me that same sympathetic look she'd perfected over the years. Maybe I should finally make that doctor's appointment. There it was. The same script she'd been using for 3 years, delivered with the same concerned tone, but now I could see it for what it really was. A well-rehearsed lie designed to shut down any questions before they started. "Maybe you should," I agreed. "Want me to help you find a good specialist?" For just a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Panic, annoyance, whatever it was. She covered it quickly. "Oh, that's sweet of you, but I'll handle it. You know how these things are kind of personal." She turned back to the stove, effectively ending the conversation. But I'd seen what I needed to see. She had no intention of seeing any doctor, because there was nothing wrong with her. The whole medical angle was just another tool in her manipulation toolkit. That weekend, I decided to test something. I suggested we go out for dinner, maybe catch a movie afterward. She immediately launched into her usual routine about being tired and not feeling up for a late night. But when her sister called an hour later, asking if she wanted to join a girls' night out, she was suddenly full of energy. "Oh, that sounds fun. What time? I'll just need to change into something cute." She hung up the phone and practically bounced toward the bedroom. I followed her. "I thought you were tired tonight." I was, but you know how it is. Sometimes getting out with the girls is exactly what I need to feel better. It's different from going to a crowded restaurant and sitting through a long movie. She was already pulling clothes out of her closet, completely focused on getting ready. Different, right? Going out was only energizing when it was her idea with her friends on her terms. When it was something I suggested, something that might lead to us spending quality time together, she was suddenly too drained to participate. I watched her get ready, applying makeup with the kind of care and attention she hadn't shown when preparing for our date nights in months. She looked beautiful, vibrant, excited, everything she claimed she couldn't be when it came to our relationship. "Have fun tonight," I said, and I meant it. She was about to give me exactly what I needed, time alone to think and plan. After she left, I sat down and started writing. I documented everything I'd observed, every inconsistency, every time she'd shown energy for others while claiming exhaustion around me. I noted dates, times, and specific conversations. If I was going to handle this situation properly, I needed to be organized about it. The pattern was clear. She had trained me to accept her rejection as normal, to feel guilty for wanting intimacy with my own wife, to constantly worry about her well-being while she used my concern as a weapon against me. But there was something else I was starting to understand. This wasn't just about sex. This was about respect, honesty, and the fundamental trust that a marriage is supposed to be built on. She hadn't just lied to me about one thing. She'd created an entire false reality where I was the problem for wanting a normal, healthy relationship with her. When she came home that night, slightly tipsy and full of stories about her evening out, I was waiting in the living room with a book. "Hey babe, you should have seen us tonight. We were dancing, laughing, having the best time. I feel so much better now." She was glowing, more animated than I'd seen her in months. "That's great," I said, looking up from my book. "You seem like you have a lot more energy now. Oh, you know what they say. Sometimes you just need to get out and have fun with friends. It's like therapy. She kicked off her heels and stretched. I'm actually not even tired yet. Might stay up and watch something. Not tired. After claiming for days that she was exhausted, after using fatigue as an excuse to avoid any meaningful connection with me, she was now wide awake and energized. I closed my book and stood up. Well, I'm heading to bed. Glad you had a good time. As I walked past her toward the stairs, she reached out and touched my arm. Hey, maybe tomorrow we could, spend some time together. I'm feeling pretty good right now. There it was. The pattern she described, to her friends, playing out exactly as she'd explained it. She was feeling good, so she was offering me a crumb of attention. And in the past, I would have been pathetically grateful for it. Maybe, I said, gently removing her hand from my arm. We'll see how you're feeling tomorrow. For the first time in 3 years, I was the one who walked away, and the confused look on her face told me everything I needed to know about how unusual that was. As I got ready for bed, I realized something important. I wasn't just gathering evidence anymore. I was changing. The man who had spent 3 years accepting whatever she chose to give him was disappearing, replaced by someone who understood his own worth. She had spent so long treating me like I was easy to fool that she'd forgotten I was capable of learning, adapting, and making my own strategic decisions. That oversight was going to cost her more than she realized. Monday morning, I decided to test just how committed she was to her medical excuse. Over breakfast, I brought up the topic with calculated casualness. I've been thinking about what you said regarding those hormone issues. I did some research and found this specialist downtown who has excellent reviews. Dr. Martinez. She specializes in exactly what you've been describing. She nearly choked on her coffee. Oh, that's really thoughtful of you, but I don't think we need to rush into anything that drastic. Drastic? It's just a consultation. You've been dealing with this for 3 years. Don't you think it's time to get some professional help? I kept my tone concerned, supportive, exactly what she'd expect from the understanding husband she thought she had. Well, yes, but these things are complicated. It's not just about hormones. There are psychological factors, stress from work, lots of variables. She was scrambling, and I could see the wheels turning as she tried to find a way out. Even more reason to see someone qualified. Dr. Martinez handles all of that. I can make the appointment for you if you'd like. This week even, the panic in her eyes was unmistakable. No, I'll handle it myself. When I'm ready, these things need to be done on my timeline. Of course they did, because there was no timeline for addressing a condition that didn't exist. I understand, I said, but I didn't let it go. It's just that I hate seeing you struggle with something that might be treatable. What if there's a simple solution we haven't considered? She got up from the table abruptly. I need to get ready for work. We can talk about this later. But we didn't talk about it later. In fact, she spent the rest of the week avoiding the topic entirely. Whenever I brought up anything related to her health, she'd change the subject or find an excuse to leave the room. By Friday, I decided to escalate the test. I came home with a stack of medical brochures and articles I printed from reputable sources. Look what I found, I said, spreading them across the kitchen counter. There are so many treatment options available now. Hormone therapy, lifestyle changes, even some new medications that are getting amazing results. She stared at the papers like they were evidence at a crime scene. Where did you get all this? I've been doing research. I want to help you get through this. I picked up one of the brochures. This clinic offers comprehensive testing. They can figure out exactly what's going on and create a personalized treatment plan. I don't need a personalized treatment plan, she snapped, then immediately caught herself. I'm not ready for all that yet. It's overwhelming. What's overwhelming about getting help? I asked, genuinely curious to hear how she'd explain this one. It's personal. Okay, I need to handle this in my own way, at my own pace. All this pressure isn't helping. Pressure. I was applying pressure by suggesting she seek treatment for a condition she'd been claiming to have for 3 years. The irony was almost amusing. I'm not trying to pressure you, I said calmly. I'm trying to support you, but I have to admit I'm starting to wonder if you actually want to fix this problem. Her face went pale. Of course, I want to fix it. What kind of question is that? Then why are you so resistant to getting help? You've been suffering for 3 years, but every time I suggest a solution, you find a reason to avoid it. She was trapped, and she knew it. If she continued to resist medical intervention, she'd have to explain why. But if she agreed to see a doctor, her entire deception would unravel. Fine, she said finally. I'll make an appointment. But I'm doing it my way, with a doctor I choose, when I'm ready. When will that be? I pressed. Soon, I promise. Just give me some time to research doctors and find the right fit. I nodded, but I wasn't done. You know what? While you're researching, why don't we try some of the lifestyle changes they recommend? Diet modifications, exercise routines, stress reduction techniques. We could start tonight. Tonight? She looked genuinely confused. Sure. This article mentions that certain foods can help with hormone balance, and there are some simple exercises we could do together. Nothing too intense, just some gentle stretching and relaxation techniques. I don't think I'm up for that tonight. I'm pretty tired. There it was again. The same excuse, right on schedule. But this time, I was ready for it. Actually, the article says that gentle exercise can help with fatigue, even just a short walk around the neighborhood. It might make you feel better. I don't think so. Maybe tomorrow. What about the dietary changes? We could start with dinner tonight. I'd be happy to cook something hormone-friendly. She was getting frustrated, I could tell. Every suggestion I made was perfectly reasonable, completely supportive, and absolutely impossible for her to refuse without seeming like she didn't want to get better. Look, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but this isn't how healing works. You can't just throw a bunch of solutions at a problem and expect it to disappear overnight. I'm not expecting it to disappear overnight, I replied. I'm just trying to understand why you seem so reluctant to try anything that might help. I'm not reluctant. I'm being realistic. These things take time, and they require the right approach. What is the right approach? She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out how to answer that question without digging herself deeper into the hole she'd created. The right approach is patience, she said finally. Understanding, not pushing me to do things I'm not ready for. I've been patient for 3 years, I said quietly. I've been understanding. I've never pushed you to do anything you weren't ready for, but I'm starting to wonder if my patience is actually enabling you to avoid dealing with this problem. The word enabling hit her like a physical blow. She knew exactly what I meant, even if she couldn't acknowledge it. That's not fair, she said. I'm dealing with a medical condition, not avoiding anything. Then prove it, I said. Simply, make the appointment. Try the lifestyle changes. Show me that you're as committed to fixing this as I am to supporting you through it. She didn't answer. She just stood there, staring at the medical brochures scattered across our kitchen counter, knowing that I had just called her bluff in the most reasonable, supportive way possible. For the first time in 3 years, she was the one who was cornered, and we both knew it. I need some air, she said finally, grabbing her keys and heading for the door. As I watched her leave, I felt a satisfaction I hadn't experienced in years. Not because I was hurting her, but because I was finally refusing to be the easy target she'd grown accustomed to. The game was changing, and she was starting to realize that the rules she'd written no longer applied. She came back 3 hours later, looking like she'd been driving around, trying to figure out her next move. When she walked into the living room where I was reading, she had that calculated, calm expression she used when she was about to try to manipulate a situation back in her favor. I've been thinking about what you said, she began, settling into the chair across from me. And you're right, I have been avoiding getting help, but not for the reasons you think. I looked up from my book, genuinely curious to hear this new version of events. I'm scared, she continued, her voice taking on that vulnerable tone she'd perfected. What if they tell me there's nothing wrong? What if this is just who I am now? What if there's no treatment that works? It was good. Really good. She was acknowledging my concerns while repositioning herself as the victim of her own fears, rather than the architect of an elaborate deception. In the past, this approach would have worked perfectly on me. Those are valid concerns, I said, closing my book. But wouldn't it be better to know for sure? Either way, at least you'd have answers. You're absolutely right, she said, nodding earnestly. I'll make the appointment this week, I promise. I watched her face carefully as I delivered my next line. Actually, I already made one for you. The mask slipped for just a moment. Pure panic flashed across her features before she caught herself. You what? I called Dr. Martinez's office this afternoon. They had a cancellation for Wednesday at 2. I figured since you've been struggling with this for so long, we shouldn't wait any longer than necessary. She was quiet for several seconds, processing this development. I could practically see her mind racing through possible responses. That's very thoughtful of you. But I would have preferred to make my own appointment with my own doctor. Dr. Martinez comes highly recommended, but if you'd rather see someone else, I can cancel and you can schedule with whoever you're more comfortable with. When were you thinking of doing that? Another trap. If she canceled the appointment I'd made, she'd have to provide a specific timeline for making her own, and I'd hold her to it. No, Dr. Martinez is fine. It's just that Wednesday afternoon is difficult for me. I have that presentation at work. The presentation you mentioned was moved to Thursday. Remember, you told me about it yesterday. I hadn't forgotten because there was no presentation. She'd mentioned it casually as an excuse for why she'd be stressed this week, another layer in her ongoing performance. Right? Thursday. But still, Wednesday is just really busy for me right now. I can call and reschedule if you want. What day works better for you? She was trapped again, and she knew it. Every reasonable response I offered made her resistance look more suspicious. No, Wednesday is fine, I'll make it work. Great, I said, picking up my book again. I'll drive you if you want. Moral support, that's not necessary. These appointments are usually pretty routine. I thought you said you were scared about what they might tell you. She stared at me for a moment, realizing she'd contradicted herself. I am, but I think I need to do this on my own. Face my fears independently. Of course, whatever makes you most comfortable, but I wasn't done yet. Over the next 2 days, I continued my campaign of helpful support. I researched common questions patients ask during hormone consultations and shared them with her. I found articles about preparing for medical appointments and highlighted the relevant sections. I even offered to help her write down her symptoms and timeline so she wouldn't forget anything important during the appointment. Each gesture of support made her more nervous, more defensive. By Tuesday night, she was barely speaking to me. You seem anxious about tomorrow, I observed as we got ready for bed. I'm fine. It's normal to be nervous before a medical appointment, especially one you've been putting off for so long. She turned to face me, and for a moment I thought she might actually confess. Instead, she doubled down. I haven't been putting it off. I've been waiting for the right time, and now is the right time. Apparently you think so. There was an edge to her voice now, a resentment that she couldn't quite hide. She was angry at me for forcing her into this corner, for making her lies harder to maintain. I think any time is the right time to address something that's been affecting our marriage for 3 years, I said calmly. Affecting our marriage? Is that what you think this is about? What else would it be about? She didn't answer, but I could see the wheels turning. She was trying to figure out how to make this my fault somehow. How to position me as the selfish husband who was pressuring his sick wife. Wednesday morning arrived, and she was a wreck. She changed clothes 3 times, claimed she wasn't feeling well enough to go, and then suggested postponing until she felt better. The appointment is in 4 hours, I reminded her. Dr. Martinez is expecting you. I know, but I'm having one of my bad days. Maybe this isn't the best time for an evaluation. Actually, having a bad day might give the doctor a better sense of what you're dealing with. She'll be able to see your symptoms firsthand. That was the wrong thing to say if she was actually sick, but the perfect thing to say if she was faking, because someone who was actually experiencing medical symptoms would want the doctor to observe them. Someone who was pretending to have symptoms would want to avoid any real medical scrutiny. I don't think that's how it works, she said weakly. Want me to call the office and ask? I'm sure they deal with this kind of thing all the time. No, don't call. I'll go, but I might not be very talkative afterward. These things can be emotionally draining. I understand. Take all the time you need. I watched her leave for the appointment, knowing exactly what was going to happen. She'd either have to go through with an examination that would expose her lies, or she'd have to find a way to avoid the appointment entirely. 3 hours later, my phone rang. Hey, she said, her voice drained. I'm at the doctor's office, but there's been a mix-up with the insurance. They're saying I need pre-authorization for this type of consultation. I might have to reschedule. I almost smiled. She'd found her way out, just as I'd expected she would. That's frustrating, I said. Did you ask them to call the insurance company directly? Sometimes they can get authorization on the spot. They said it might take a few days to sort out. Want me to call our insurance? I can probably get this resolved today. No, don't worry about it. I'll handle it. Are you sure? I don't mind making some calls. I'm sure. I'll reschedule once I get this straightened out. She came home that evening claiming the appointment had been postponed due to insurance issues. She had the story rehearsed perfectly, complete with details about forms that needed to be filled out and pre-authorization requirements. But I knew better. And more importantly, she knew that I knew better. The look in her eyes when she finished her explanation told me everything. She was starting to realize that the man she'd been lying to for 3 years was no longer the same man who would accept any story she chose to tell him. The game was about to reach its final stage, and she was running out of moves. Friday night, I made my move. She was in the kitchen, going through her usual routine of pretending to be tired after work, when I walked in with my phone in hand. Interesting thing happened today, I said casually, leaning against the counter. I called our insurance company about that pre-authorization issue you mentioned. She froze, a glass halfway to her lips. Turns out they don't require pre-authorization for hormone consultations. In fact, Dr. Martinez's office is fully covered under our plan. Has been for years. The glass trembled slightly in her hand. Maybe there was some confusion. You know how these things can be, no confusion. I spoke to 3 different people to make sure. I even called Dr. Martinez's office. They said you never showed up for your appointment. She set the glass down carefully, her mind racing for an explanation. I also did something else today, I continued. I called that restaurant downtown. The one where you claimed you had lunch with your sister last week when you couldn't make our dinner plans because you were too drained. Funny thing, they don't have your sister's name in their reservation system for that day. Her face had gone completely pale. But the most interesting discovery was when I checked our credit card statements. 3 charges at that wine bar on the other side of town. Same day you told me you were home resting because of your condition. Same wine bar where you celebrated with your friends after that promotion at work. I can explain all of this, she started, but I held up my hand. No need, because I already know the explanation. I heard it myself last Tuesday when you were on the patio with your friends. The color drained from her face completely. She opened her mouth, then closed it, realizing that any denial would be pointless. I heard every word, I continued. About how easy I am to fool, about your fake medical condition, about how you've been manipulating me for 3 years because I'm too trusting to question your lies. She slumped against the counter, all pretense finally gone. How long were you listening? She whispered. Long enough to understand exactly who I've been married to. Long enough to realize that every rejection, every excuse, every time you made me feel guilty for wanting a normal relationship with my wife, was all part of your little game. It wasn't a game, she said weakly. Really? Because that's exactly what you called it. You said you had it down to a science. You bragged about how gullible I was. She started to cry, but I felt nothing. These weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of someone who'd been caught. I never meant to hurt you, she sobbed. You meant to deceive me for 3 years. You meant to make me question myself, doubt my own needs, feel grateful for scraps of affection from my own wife. I love you, she said desperately. No, you don't. You love controlling me. You love having a husband who never questions your stories, never demands honesty, never expects you to treat him with basic respect. She tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. The woman I thought I married would never have spent 3 years systematically lying to her husband's face. The woman I thought I married wouldn't have turned my trust into entertainment for her friends. I can change. We can work through this. I looked at her for a long moment, this woman who had convinced me for 3 years that I was the problem in our marriage. No, we can't. Because this isn't about one lie or one mistake. This is about who you fundamentally are, someone who thinks it's acceptable to manipulate the person who loves them most. What are you saying? I'm saying that the easy-to-fool husband you married doesn't exist anymore, and the man standing here now doesn't accept deception, manipulation, or disrespect from anyone. So, what happens now? I looked at her one final time, seeing her clearly for the first time in years. Now you find out what it's like to lose someone who actually loved you. Monday morning, I had divorce papers drawn up. Not because I was acting out of anger, but because I'd made a calculated decision about the kind of life I wanted to live. She spent the weekend alternating between tears, apologies, and attempts to convince me that her 3-year deception was somehow a minor misunderstanding. She promised counseling, complete honesty, whatever I wanted to hear. But I'd already heard everything I needed to hear on that patio. When I handed her the papers, she stared at them like they were written in a foreign language. You're serious about this? Completely serious. Over one mistake? 3 years of systematic lying isn't one mistake. It's a pattern of behavior that shows me exactly who you are. She tried a different approach. Think about everything we've built together. Our home, our life, our history. Our history is built on lies. Our life together is based on you manipulating me into accepting whatever you felt like giving me. I can prove to you that I've changed. Give me a chance. I sat down across from her, maintaining the calm composure I'd developed over the past week. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign these papers. We're going to split our assets fairly, and you're going to move out by the end of the month. And if I refuse, then I'll file contested proceedings and present evidence of your deception to the court, including recordings I made of our conversations this week where you continued lying even after being caught. Her eyes widened. You recorded me? I learned from the best. Turns out documentation is pretty useful when someone has a habit of changing their story. She was quiet for several minutes, processing the reality of her situation. I never thought you'd actually leave me, she admitted finally. That was your first mistake. Your second was assuming I'd stay the same person you'd been manipulating for 3 years. What happened to the man I married? He grew up. He realized that love without respect isn't love at all. He decided he deserved better than being someone's easy target. She signed the papers that afternoon. 3 weeks later, she was gone. The house felt different immediately. Not empty, but clean, like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had been lifted. Her friends stopped by once, trying to convince me to reconsider. They painted her as a confused woman who'd made some poor choices but truly loved me. I listened politely, then asked them if they'd want their husbands treating them the way she treated me. They didn't have an answer for that. 6 months later, I ran into her at a coffee shop downtown. She looked tired, older somehow. When she saw me, she approached with that hesitant smile she used to use when she wanted something. "You look good," she said. "I feel good. I've been thinking about us a lot, about what I lost. You didn't lose anything. You threw it away. Do you think there's any chance we could talk, maybe try again?" I looked at her for a moment, remembering the man I used to be, the one who would have seen her sadness and felt guilty for standing up for himself. "No," I said simply, "but I hope you've learned something from this." "I have. I've learned that I took you for granted. That's only part of it. The bigger lesson is that when you treat someone like they're stupid, eventually they stop being stupid." I left her sitting there, probably expecting me to change my mind like the old version of me might have done. But that man was gone. In his place was someone who knew his worth, someone who wouldn't accept less than he deserved, someone who understood that real love requires honesty, respect, and genuine partnership. She'd spent 3 years training me to be easy to fool. In the process, she'd created the exact opposite, a man who would never again accept deception from anyone. The irony was perfect, and the justice was complete.